Picture this. The year is 1518. The city of Strasbourg, deep in the Holy Roman Empire, is alive with the hum of daily life. Farmers and merchants trade goods in the market square. The scent of bread, sweat, and smoke hangs in the air. It was a tense time. The summer heat was unrelenting. The people of Strasbourg had faced years of hardship, crop failures, disease, and political unrest. Fear of famine gripped the city. Plague rumors swept through villages. God, it seemed, had turned his face away. The narrator pauses. The faint sound of rhythmic footsteps begins in the background. And then it began. Spotlight shifts to a woman stepping into the center of the stage, her movements jerky and mechanical. Her name was Frau Trophäa. In the early morning light, she walked into the street and began to dance. But this was no joyful celebration. She danced without music, without a partner. Her movements were wild, frantic, as though her body had been taken over. The dancer picks up speed, her steps growing louder and more frantic. A drumbeat builds in the background. Hours passed, then a full day. She could not stop. Her feet bled, her face contorted in pain, and yet she danced. By the third day, a small crowd had gathered to watch. Some whispered it was witchcraft. Others feared it was divine punishment. But what no one knew then, what no one could possibly imagine, was that this was only the beginning. Within days, Frau Trophäa's strange condition began to spread. First, a handful of people joined her. Then dozens. Men, women, and even children were overcome by the same uncontrollable urge to dance. The number of dancers on stage increases. Some laugh hysterically, others cry out in pain, but all are moving. Townsfolk watch in horror. By the end of the week, there were over 30 dancers. By the end of the month, that number had swelled to 400. Imagine it, the streets of Strasbourg, filled with bodies in constant, agonizing motion, their feet blistered and raw, their faces streaked with sweat and tears. The music grows louder and more chaotic, then suddenly cuts off. Silence. Some collapsed from sheer exhaustion. Others suffered strokes or heart attacks, their bodies giving out under the relentless strain. Yet, for those who survived, the dancing continued, day and night, without rest. The city council was at a loss. What was happening to their people? Was it a sickness, a curse, or something more sinister? Actors portraying council members argue heatedly. Council Member 1, this is a scourge from God, a punishment for our sins. Council Member 2, nonsense. The devil himself walks among us, sowing madness. Council Member 3, we must seek the advice of the physicians. Perhaps they can explain this malady. Narrator, the city's physicians examined the afflicted and came to a curious conclusion. An actor playing a doctor steps forward holding a scroll. Doctor, their blood is overheated, filled with too much bile and fire. They are suffering from an excess of passion and heat in the body. The council members murmur uneasily. Doctor, the solution is simple. They must dance it out. Only by indulging the fever can it be purged. Council Member 1, incredulous. You suggest we encourage this madness? Doctor, yes. Build stages. Hire musicians. Let the dancers release their excess humors. Only then will they be cured. And so, the council followed the doctor's advice. The council ordered stages to be built in the city's main squares. Musicians were hired to accompany the dancers. Townsfolk were encouraged to watch, to cheer, to join in if they dared. At first, it seemed like the madness might subside. But the opposite happened. More dancers stagger onto the stage, their movements chaotic. The music becomes darker and more frenzied. Some dancers collapse, but others take their place. The plague spread faster than ever. By mid-August, hundreds were affected. The dancers seemed trapped, their bodies moving against their will. Some screamed in terror, others wept uncontrollably. An older man collapses on stage. Townsfolk rush to help, but he does not move. Many would not survive. The relentless dancing pushed their bodies to the breaking point. Strokes, heart attacks, dehydration. The plague was claiming lives faster than the city could count. The music cuts off abruptly. A dancer stands alone on stage, swaying weakly. The question remained, what was causing this? In the centuries since the dancing plague of 1518, scholars have proposed many theories. One suggests ergot poisoning, caused by a toxic mold that grows on damp rye. This devil's bread can induce hallucinations, spasms, and delirium. Perhaps the people of Strasbourg were unknowingly poisoned. Projections show ergot-infected rye and eerie depictions of hallucinations. Another theory points to mass hysteria, a psychological phenomenon triggered by stress and fear. In 1518, Strasbourg was a city on edge. Famine threatened the region. Disease and poverty were rampant. The people lived in fear of God's wrath. Could this intense stress have caused a collective breakdown? Then there is the religious theory. In medieval Europe, Saint Vitus was the patron saint of dancers. Some believed that those who angered him would be cursed to dance uncontrollably. Projections shift to medieval depictions of Saint Vitus and dancing worshippers. In their desperation, the people of Strasbourg built shrines and held ceremonies, begging Saint Vitus to lift the curse. By September of 1518, the plague began to fade. Some say the dancers simply exhausted themselves. Others credit the religious rituals. Whatever the reason, the streets of Strasbourg grew quiet once more. The dancers, now slow and weak, collapse one by one. The stage grows silent, but the scars of that summer lingered. The people of Strasbourg had witnessed something they could not explain, something that defied logic, science, and faith. The dancing plague of 1518 remains one of history's great enigmas. Was it a sickness of the body or the mind? A curse? A hallucination? Or perhaps a desperate cry for help from a people pushed to their limits? Whatever the truth, this strange and haunting tale reminds us of the mysteries that lie within the human mind and the forces that can unite us in madness or despair. The lights fade as the faint sound of footsteps and drums echoes once more. And so the dancers of 1518 fade into history, their strange, desperate rhythm forever etched